I'm Dov Barron. I'm the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com, and I assist leaders in finding their purpose so they can have purpose-driven organizations and drive purpose-driven cultures to become more conscious, more elevated, and more mentally and emotionally agile.
Dov Barron, wonderful to have you on the show. How are you today, sir?
Excellent. Excited to be here, excited to share, excited to add value to you and the audience.
Excellent. I loved your intro. You're talking about purpose-driven leadership, and a lot of people use those words and don't seem to have any purpose. So sounds like you help people figure that out. Tell us a little bit more.
Well, that's actually a great point. You and I, Jeff, in a previous conversation talked about agility and how it's a word that's thrown around, but nobody knows what the hell it means. And, it's a great philosophy. And I hear the same thing with purpose. Oh yeah, purpose, we're purpose driven. Tell me your purpose. No, that's not it. That's your mission statement. So you're absolutely right. People don't actually know what their purpose is. And I say, if you've read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, that's a great book to start with. He says, start. But starting with why is not what it's actually about. It's actually what is the why of your why is your purpose. What's underneath that? What psychologically drives you and this organization?
Right. So when you first meet with a company, what are some of the tip-offs about not being purpose-driven? Like, what do you see them doing?
Well, first of all, as you well understand, there's still a lot of command and control going on. That's not a purpose-driven organization. You can't have a purpose-driven organization that's command and control. Even though the purpose is usually started by the founder, and if the founder's gone, then it's by certainly the executive team. But the thing about a purpose is purpose and mission are so very different, and people don't understand it. Mission is an intellectual exercise that has become the thing. So this is our mission statement. We put it on the wall so everybody can see it, but nobody really knows what it means. We've used the word innovation because that's what we're supposed to say, and we've used the word cutting edge because that's what we're supposed to say, and we've used the word whatever it is that's trendy. That's mission. That's not the same as purpose. Purpose is emotionally evocative. If I can repeat your mission statement without any emotion, it's not a purpose, it's a mission. A purpose statement must evoke emotion inside of me, whether I am the janitor or whether I am the CEO. I'm excited to be here because I feel like my life's purpose is tied to this organization's purpose and we matter in the world. That's what counts.
Wow. So how do you get an executive, someone who's really focused on profitability, numbers, communications to the board, Wall Street, but not really focused on emotions, not really focused on culture? How do you get them really refocused on the right things?
That's a great question. And I'll tell you why it's a great question, because I've learned to love that question that I hated for so long. I hated it. And then I went back into some of my old books and realized, oh my God, this, it's like you talking about, this is not new stuff.
Right.
This is not new at all. So, back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, the S&P 500 did research, and they looked at the companies on the S&P 500, and what they discovered was that the average company over a period of a decade would have about 116% growth. Pretty great. Most companies would be very happy with that. However, the purpose-driven organization would have about 1,126% growth. Does purpose matter?
Right.
Yes. And for those of you who are bottom line driven, I understand, I get it. Now you go, well, I don't get it because it makes us more profitable. Because one of the things we know more than anything, engagement sucks. It's not bad, it sucks. More than 70% of our workforce are disengaged. More than 80% of your workforce are looking for other jobs. What does that say? So they're looking for other employment, they're disengaged, and some of them are actively disengaged, which means that they are, well, my term, they're peeing in your cornflakes, meaning that they are just poisoning the organization. So you have got to get people engaged. You can't get people engaged past a certain level with salary. You've got to emotionally engage them. They've got to know you care. They've got to trust you at a deep, deep level. And that's how they become more productive. That's how it matters. And purpose is what does that.
Right, you were using some really interesting numbers there. And I know one of the things we talked about in earlier conversations was that these aren't new words. These aren't new ideas.
No.
I'm 57 years old, and I've been hearing about empowerment since my very first job in the early 1980s or late 70s. I've been hearing about empowerment and self-organization and having purpose. And I've been hearing about these things for many years, but what I never heard then that I'm hearing from you is data.
Right.
It seems like you have a good handle on what this really means. And is that going to be the differentiator that makes it real this time finally? Is it the data?
One would hope so. One would hope so. But, I think that let's, my background is in psychology and understanding psychology and the psychology of human beings, psychology of excellence, and of really family dynamics and human dynamics. And the truth of the matter is, when you face those things, you also have to look at the limitations of that. And what that means is, where do people hold themselves back? Where do we restrict ourselves? So what I mean by when I say, I hope so, the truth of the matter is that human beings are pretty stuck. And what I mean by that is, it is our nature to not like change. If you've been a leader, if you're listening to this show right now, you're listening to Jeff's show, you're in a leadership position. If you're in a leadership position, you know that when you were not in charge and somebody brought a change about, you went, oh, Jesus, really, I got to do this? And now you're looking and you're going, we've got to change this. Well, hold on a sec. Just think about it for a minute. Here's the first principle of leadership. I learned this from Nito Cobain, who's one of the great speakers of our time. And Nito said, the only people who like change are in diapers.
That's good.
It's very simple. So the fact of the matter is, we all want it to change as long as we don't have to. So that's what it comes down to. And what we've got to get better at is embracing change, because the fact of the matter is, we all know it's inevitable, but it's no longer inevitable just simply at the understanding of, yeah, things change. It will put you out of business if you don't change your leadership style, if you don't have agility psychologically and practically in how you operate. You are no longer going to exist in business. And that is vital for us to all understand. So I hope the data makes the difference. But
Right.
The main thing we've got to grasp inside of that is that all change starts within.
Right. I was teaching a class the other day and somebody raised their hand and said, what about the worker who wants to sit in his cube, not participate in anything, be tasked with what to do, put in his, more than likely 35 hours a week. What do we do with that person who just doesn't want to be empowered? How do you solve that problem?
Great question. I was asked that myself very recently at a meeting with 40 CEOs, and the answer was very simple. That's okay. For now, that person can stay there. They're a cog in the machine, and they're a high productive cog in the machine, as long as they're engaged with the work they're doing.
Right.
They don't actually have to be that engaged with the culture. As long as they're not poisoning the culture, but they're producing what they're doing, it's fine. Let them do what they're doing. And they go, really? I'm surprised you said that. And I said, no, I'll tell you why it's okay. And they say, why? Because they will be unemployed within 5 years. And they go, what do you mean? Because their job will be taken by AI. It's not my opinion. That's the research. If you are a person who goes in and does something that you want to be told what to do, and then you put it out, you can be replaced by AI. So if you're sitting there listening to this show and going, yeah, but I don't really want to do that. Well, that's okay. Plan your retirement now, because you're going to retire faster than you think, because AI is coming for your job. By 2030, 40% of the workforce will be replaced by AI. Now,
Right.
Here's the thing. This is what we all got to know. What can't AI replace? Because AI can optimize. But what can't AI replace? It can't replace empathy. It can't replace creativity. And it can't replace love. And if you're going to have relationships with your people and you're going to build trust and you're going to build loyalty, you need empathy, you need trust, and you need love. And people go, love? Oh my God,
Yeah.
why are you using love? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a leader in a government here. I'm a leader of a big organization. We don't use love. If you don't learn to love your people, someone else will, and they will
Right.
take your talent away. Human beings, every one of us, as stoic as we like to think we are, every one of us needs to feel loved and appreciated. And if you don't
Right.
love your people, someone else will.
Right. One of the things I added to that conversation when I was asked this question in class the other day was, you know, once you start really becoming a purpose-driven, agile, self-organizing team, those people might self-select themselves and decide they don't like to be there. And they may take care of that problem for you, right?
Yeah, I totally believe that. When I come in to an organization, we work with initially the executive team, and I'm, usually sitting with a CEO or a founder or whoever it is, and they said, "Well, tell us what we can expect." And I said, "Well, you can expect to lose at least one major player."
Right.
And they go, well, we don't want to. We're trying to get better team. You want a better team? Yes, you can expect to lose one major player. And they go, why? So because somebody's going to be so resistant that they're going to say, I'm out. And they will create room for somebody much better. And you will definitely go into anxiety when they leave. But here's the thing. I promise you, you'll lose nothing. In fact, everything will go up. And I give the example, I say, I want you to imagine that you've got a sales team, and in that sales team, your highest producer is a diva. And they go, okay, this is the person who brings in 20%. It's massive, but they're a diva. They drive everybody crazy. They're always demanding, but you don't let them go because they're so high producing. And then one day, whatever happens, the feces hits the fan, and you have to let them go. For whatever the reason is, you let them go. I said, what happens? And they go, I guess our sales go down 20%. And I go, you're absolutely right. That is what happens for a short period of time. But let me tell you what happens in the staff room. Everybody's thinking, why the hell didn't you do it earlier?
Yeah.
We've lost trust in you. We've lost trust in your leadership. And then if you can regain their trust, that's a big if you can regain their trust, productivity from everybody else on the team goes up and will overtake that 20% because everybody else was repressed by the fact that you didn't take care of them and you were taking care of a diva. It's the same thing in the executive team, that if somebody doesn't want to do it, this is actually, by the way, you're a broad thinking man, and I understand that. This is biology. So at a cellular level, if cells don't communicate with each other, the other cells push the cell out that won't communicate. This is exactly the same. I call it the epigenetics of culture. This is what happens is when you build this rock solid culture where every cell connects with each other, they will actually push out the other cells. It's just they self-select, like, I don't want to be here. I don't fit. I can't communicate with this. And out they go. Bye-bye.
It's interesting. One of the things we see a lot is leaders believing in the notion of purposeful organizations and agile and self-organization, and actually pushing that down and forcing it on their organization. Which obviously goes without saying, I suppose, isn't purpose-driven and self-organizing. So they're not interested in having their workers self-subscribe and organically become purpose-driven. What's the damage of that when agility and purposefulness is forced upon an organization?
Well, the obvious answer is that it shows a lack of integrity. I mean, it's do as I say, not as I do. We're back to command and control.
Right.
Purpose-driven organizations are not command and control. So, you talk a lot about this, and so do I, which is we have to be values-driven. Now, so people think, it's like you say about agility, and I love what you're saying about agility, that people think agility is no rules, and we can just do whatever the heck we want. But that's actually not true at all. And it's the same with purpose-driven. People think, well, it's like, no, hold on a second. So a purpose-driven organization has very solid maxims. We take values to a deeper level. We call them maxims. Very solid maxims. Those maxims are the guardrails. And we always say, we hate the rigidity, but we want the structure. And the structure allows us to lean on it and get strength, but also know where the outer bounds are, because we want to fulfill our purpose inside of the bounds with the agility to say, this is where we're going. This is why we're going there, because we really care about this purpose. But we have the flexibility, the agility to say, oh, times have changed, and now that's the path. Okay. Is it still aligned with our maxims? Yes. Is it still aligned with our purpose? Yes. But you are telling us what to do and you're not following that. So very quickly, trust goes out of the window. And if you're not walking the talk, this again, not new. If you're not walking the talk, you won't have the trust. And therefore there is no purpose. It's some bull you've got on the wall that nobody really cares about. We are an agile, innovative, purpose-driven organization. You are full of crap and nobody cares.
Right. So a lot of things you're saying are interesting because they're paralleled pretty closely with what the Agile community is talking about. Mm-hmm. Purpose-driven, empowered organizations are equal Agile organizations. Those two things seem to be synonymous, and you're confirming that. So here's a scenario that you'll probably get a kick out of. The federal government spends about $50 billion a year, maybe a little more, on technology acquisition. Mm-hmm. They're asking companies like Lockheed Martin and Grumman and IBM to build massive systems for them. And in their RFPs, they're stating the contractor shall be agile. Contractor shall be agile. So we intend on running this project in an agile way. And remember, when we use the word project, we're not talking about you and I in the backyard building a picnic table. We're talking about 5,000 people in 8 countries, all working on building the software for the space station. Mm-hmm. And massive projects with millions and millions and millions of lines of code, many people from many different cultures. We are going to run this project or program in an agile way. So what's your reaction to that kind of request from the federal government, and what do you think the trickle-down effect of that would be?
Well, I think for me, you and I talked about this previously. I think language is a fascinating thing. I'm fascinated by language and etymology, and I love researching those things. That's one of my weird and wonderful hobbies. And so whenever I go in to do a presentation for a company, I always want to be careful of jargon. And one of the things around jargon for me, so for instance, if I'm going in to talk about purpose-driven organization, I have to understand purpose is jargon.
Right.
It's not to me, and this is the problem. It's that we think that our common language is not jargon, but it is jargon to somebody else. So if I get a document back that says we need this to be an agile project, my first question is, please tell me what agile means to you.
Right.
Because I want to know what it means to you, because my idea of agile may be very different than yours. Right. I am not Mary Lou Retton, and if that's what you're looking for me to be, I'm not going to be able to do that. If you're looking for me to have agility around how I deal with people, I might have some agility around that, but how on the standard I keep, is that, do you want me to have agility around that? Oh no, we want you to hold the standard. Well, please describe agility. So I think that for me is always the definition of, and I think this is where we fall down so much in our communication. I teach this to leaders in our communication skills training, is the number one thing you have to do is find the meaning of the meaning for that person. What does this mean to you, Jeff? What does this mean to you, Fred? Oh, vastly different. And we're not even talking about the difference in culture between China and America or India or anywhere else. I love what Bob Hope once said: England and America, 2 countries separated by a common language.
Right.
Well, now we've got internet English, which is different again, as well as Australian and Kiwi and all the other countries that quote speak English.
Right. So one of the things I've noted is that there are certain markers to agility, at least in the software business. We tend to think of those markers as agile organizations demonstrate their agility by having small cohesive teams that stay together, by having communications mechanisms in place. And there are a number of markers that are, sort of, you can think of these as tip-offs. These are actually agile organizations. But implementing those markers doesn't necessarily make one agile or purpose-driven. So a lot of these companies seem to be saying, okay, the government is asking us to be agile. Let's put together small teams and let's put together visual information indicators to share information. and let's frequently meet with our customer. But they're doing that in a very command and control way. They're forcing their teams to do that. And the government's saying, oh, this is great. You are indeed agile. The federal government just put out a paper called How to Detect Agile BS.
Really?
Believe it or not, it was put out by the Defense Innovation Board, and which is staffed by the likes of Facebook and Google and a lot of Silicon Valley companies, as well as government. And that paper said a company I'm summarizing, of course, the 5-page documents. It's the William Barr summary of the 300-page document, right? So I'm sure people are going to yell and say I was political, but essentially they blame the workers. They said, you detect Agile BS when you don't have small teams working together and when you don't have customers and teams talking to each other frequently. And they basically listed a number of the markers of agility without really getting into the real root cause of what makes an organization agile or not, right? And you talk about leadership a lot. So talk a little bit about why the leadership component is the most important part. Or if you don't agree with that, please feel free to disagree. Well, why leadership is the most important thing when it comes to being agile, purpose-driven, and empowering workers.
Again, great question, because as I said, we work with the C-suite initially, the founders and the C-suite initially. And people say, well, why don't you just come in and do it at management level? What the heck would be the point of that? Leadership is first and foremost by example. We must lead by example. And so if you are not a leader who is willing to have agility, don't put agile systems in place. If you're not willing to be purpose-driven, don't bring me in. We went into a company recently, the CEO brought us in for the initial half-day training. We went in and did it, and the founder was there. And at the end of the day, I got to tell you, what I delivered was spectacular. No, that's not bragging. That's just, I know what we delivered was rock solid. It was fabulous. Everybody on the team loved it. And at the end of the half day, the CEO came up to me and he's like, it was like 5 hours. And he's like, that was really fantastic. We'd like to bring you in. We'd like to have you work with us. Da, da, da. And I said, I don't think it's going to work. And he's like, what do you mean? We agreed with everything you said. And, you've told us your fees. We want to bring you in. And people are shocked that I'll actually turn down business, right?
Right.
And he said, why do you think it will work? And I said, because I have a 99% success rate because I'm interviewing you as much as you're interviewing me. And he said, okay. He goes, well, don't you like us? And I said, I love you. The whole team's fantastic. Love them. But there's a problem. And he goes, what? I said, the founder.
Yeah.
And he says, what do you mean? I said, your dad is not interested in a purpose-driven organization. He's only let me come in because you said it. And he's going to fight me all the way. He said, but Dad smiled and he was supportive and he said things. I said, I can see because of my ability, what I've learned, that your dad is going to be nodding and then stabbing me in the ass on everything we try to do all the way through. And you're going to be fighting an uphill battle. This won't work. So number one is, if you want to run a purpose-driven organization, you have to have absolute true buy-in at the upper level, because otherwise everybody's just looking up and going, yeah, you know what? It's got to be another company we were brought in with. The founder they just had somebody come in around safety, and so everybody had to wear a vest in the work area.
Yeah,
right? A safety vest. The founder wouldn't wear the safety vest, and I said, "This is going to be a problem because this is a demonstration. You can't live a purpose-driven organization." He goes, "It's a vest." I don't agree with all this bullshit. I started out in this yard 45 years ago. I go, I understand that. But you are the walking, talking, living example. And if you say it's okay not to do it because I got to a certain level, you are simply saying it's about command and control.
Right.
That's it. And that's why it has to start there. I don't care how many teams you put together. I don't care whether you go through my exercises and we drill down to your purpose. It doesn't matter to me. What matters is, are you living a purpose-driven organization? Because one of the things we say to a company is this: when we go in and work with them, here's my deal. If this doesn't transform the way you are at home, if this doesn't transform the way you are with your wife, your husband, your partner, your children, your grandchildren, if it doesn't transform all those things, I haven't done my job.
Right.
And they go, what do you mean? We're not bringing you in for that. That's what purpose-driven is. It impacts every area of your life. When you learn to have actual agility, you'll have agility in the way you parent. You'll have agility in the way you grandparent. You'll have agility in the way you do friendships. You'll have agility. You'll have purpose-driven. These things are not things that go to work because there is no separation. This is the craziness of that you and I grew up with. We have a work self and a personal self. No, you don't. That's horse crap. You have you, and you're either in integrity or you're out of it. That's it.
Yeah, no, I've definitely had that experience. I've had clients say, we want you to help make our employees more agile. Like, yeah, okay. Well, so I have one more question for you. We're getting towards the end of our time here together, but our industry, our technology industry is very metrics driven. Mm-hmm. And I always get questions. I say, many of the things that you say, I say to my clients and they say, mm-hmm. That's great. What data, how do you know when we're more agile? How do you know when we're purpose driven? How do you know when we're empowered? What data will be generated to definitively prove that what we did in this exercise is actually useful to us?
Right. Good question. So first of all, we talked about profit margins. They go up over a period, but it's not next week. It takes a period of time to measure properly. That's number one. Number two is this, hit more data. The average millennial spends 4 years in a career. You and I, when we entered into the workforce, we were asked, what do you want to do? That was a 20 to 40 year career question. Right. You and I, not so much, but generally speaking, that was the idea. Millennials are spending 4 years. That's 10 times less. They spend 1.5 to 2 years in a job and 4 years in a career. If you can't keep them, they're going to cost you money. What does that mean? It costs you 1.5 to 2 times the annual salary of an individual to train and develop them. So if they've gone before you've got your ROI on your investment, guess what? You lost money. So what you need to do is keep them longer and keep them inside of your organization. How do you keep them longer and create that loyalty? You do that by trust. How do you get the trust? By reciprocal vulnerability. That's a whole other subject we can get into. That comes through being a purpose-driven organization. So one of the metrics is how long are our people staying with us? Because here's the deal. When I entered the workforce, people of our age entered the workforce. We entered the workforce and we get, people, you go home and your friend said, how was the job today? New job. I'll give it 3 months, 6, maybe I'll give it a year. Now, millennials go to work on Monday morning in the new job and their friend, they text their friend at break, and they say, how's the job going? They go, I'm coming home at lunch. They're done. They will walk away. So you have got to, the number one metrics is you've got to keep your people loyal in a talent pool that is very thin. That's number one. Profit margins go up. On top of that, measure the engagement. Engagement goes up through the roof in a purpose-driven organization. Right. And guess what? Engaged people are 200% more productive. That's profit. So you've got engagement, you've got loyalty, and you've got cost cutting on training and development in there on top of all the profit margins.
That's fabulous. I was at a conference last week and I was involved in a debate on stage with another gentleman and he was talking about process and deliverables and how process and deliverables were the main way that we can determine whether an organization is successful, outcomes. And I was arguing that behaviors and trust and collaboration were the most important things. And he was very skeptical of my position on that. But I think you're right. The reduction in cost, the improvement of profit and quality are really the only metrics that matter, right? The other things are less important. So yeah, absolutely cool stuff. So Dov, we're just about out of time. Can you give our listeners a little bit of a background on how they might be able to work with you and how you might be able to help their organization succeed?
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you asking. Yeah, if you want to find out more about me, you can certainly go to fullmontyleadership.com. That's my website. There you can find out about bringing me in as a speaker or as a consultant strategist to work with you individually. I help leaders find their own purpose, but also work with companies, as I said, to help them build purpose-driven organizations and a purpose-driven culture. But, you know, the thing about it is this. We work at two ends. It's very interesting. The very new companies going, well, we don't really have our purpose yet. And that's great. And we also working with companies who are realizing that, yes, you know, the crisis you've talked about, millennials are coming up and life is about to change. And we are going to disappear if we don't become purpose driven. And so I come in and I help them to really dig deep into that. It's powerful work. It's empowering work. I love doing it. I'm excited to do it. You can, as I said, fullmontyleadership.com. And by the way, let me just say, I know this is crazy and people think I'm nuts for doing it, but if you want to write to me, my email is dov, D-O-V, at DOVBARON.com, dov at dovbaron.com. I want you to write to me, and I want you to write to me for two reasons. Number one, Jeff takes the time to find guests, to bring you guests so you can hear this show. He takes time out of his own calendar that is his valuable time to bring you great guests who add value to you. I want you to write to Jeff and tell him what you got out of this show. Tell him what you're going to do with it, because information's worth the hole in the donut. Transformation comes from application. Write to him, tell him what you got out of the show, CC me, and if you want to write to me and ask me about how I might be able to help you, you can feel free to do that. But I want you to go on iTunes and I want you to rate, review, and subscribe to this show, because this man's taking the time and the energy and the effort to serve you, and that service, being a servant-driven leader, is vital in agility and purpose. So please, I encourage you to do that, to support Jeff and let him know that the difference he's making. Yeah, as I said, you can write to me at dov@dovbaron.com or find me at fullmontyleadership.com. Find out about my podcast or any of my things there.
Well, thank you, Dov. That's a great pitch. And I'm glad you mentioned your podcast at the end. And I know that we're just about out of time, but I just want to make sure our guests know that, or I'm sorry, our listeners know that you have a fabulous podcast.
Thank you.
You've interviewed so many fabulous leaders. Can you just give our listeners just a short thumbnail of that so they know that they can go right there right now and listen to some of the great leaders you've interviewed and some of the great advice you've given to listeners over the years?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. Yeah, you can, as I said, you can go to fullmontyleadership.com, and if you click on podcast, it'll take you right to the page that'll take you there. As of course it is on iTunes and Spotify and iHeartRadio, and we're actually on national radio stations across the US, and we've had phenomenal leaders. You know, if you're in the leadership space and you know people like Larry Wingert, and you know, there's this other guy, what's his name? Some bald martial arts guy, Bushi or something.
Right, Jim Bouchard, right?
Yeah. That might be him, yeah, Jim Bouchard, some guy we've all heard of. Jim Bouchard has been on there as my guest many times. He's a wonderful guy. Larry Wingert, as I said, Joe Calloway, and of course modern leaders like Tom Bilyeu of Impact Theory, and Kevin Harrington of Shark Tank, just to name a few. I mean, and even for those of us who are a bit of music freaks, and I am, people like John Oates of Hall & Oates.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because, you know, leadership is not the way we think of it. It's much broader. And I wanted to find out about what it takes to be innovative in the most disruptive industry there is, which is music, and how do you keep a long-term partnership? And it was a fascinating interview to speak to a musician about that. So that just gives you an example of where we go.
That's fabulous.
Way, another guy coming up, his name is Jeff something or other. Oh, yeah, he's on there too.
Well, thank you, Dov Baron. What an amazing interview. You're a fabulous leader, fabulous speaker, and we really appreciate you taking the time to speak to our listeners, and we hope to have you back in the future.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dov.